And the Ukraine-Russia conflict has reached a pivotal point as Europe intensifies talks on strengthening long-term defense support for Kiev. In Brussels, 50 nations pledged $23 billion in military aid. Meanwhile, US-led diplomacy is gaining momentum with high-stakes peace talks involving Putin and President Trump's representative.
The Ukraine-Russia conflict stands at a critical juncture with European nations holding strategic talks on optimizing coalition support for Ukraine's long-term defense. Simultaneously, the US is engaging both Russia and Ukraine in high-stakes peace negotiations, aiming to bridge the deep divides. Following a NATO discussion on creating a reassurance force for Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire with Russia on Thursday, Britain and Germany hosted the Ukraine Defense Contract Group meeting on Friday in Brussels, with representatives from 50 countries. They announced a pledge of $23 billion in military aid to Ukraine this year.
This year, already member states have committed over 23 billion. So we are definitely doing more than last year, but we need to do more. So we see the pledges coming every day. We also see that there are steps taken by the member states, which is important that we send this signal that we are behind Ukraine, and this is also what the meeting is about.
According to The Telegraph, Britain is considering deploying troops to Ukraine for up to 5 years. The plan, one of several being discussed by allies, involves a European-led force to deter the Russian army.
And the new pledges of military aid announced today through the UDCG total over 21 billion euros. A record boost in military funding for Ukraine, and we're also surging that support to the frontline fight.
Meanwhile, Kremlin confirmed talks between President Putin and Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, who is visiting Russia and may also discuss a future Putin-Trump meeting. Earlier, Putin's investment envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, met Witkoff in St. Petersburg. Amid ongoing diplomatic efforts, Russia's defense ministry on Friday accused Ukraine of launching 5 attacks on its energy infrastructure within 24 hours, violating the US-brokered moratorium. Ravindra Chauhan's report for DD India.
All right, we'll go across to DD India. Shubhendu Ghosh is joining us live from the newsroom. Shubhendu, good morning. US and Ukraine reopened talks on contentious mineral deals, and Kiev and Washington have been haggling over a deal. What details do you have?
That's right, Abhishek. Good morning. Yes, 2 important parallel talks are taking place between US representatives and Ukraine, as well as Steve Witkoff, who is Donald Trump's direct envoy. He's visiting St. Petersburg, held talks with President Putin, the 3rd round of talks. So first, let's talk about the US-Ukraine talks, focusing on the minerals deal. Remember, the minerals deal is seen as an important hedge for the American intervention push for a peace deal in the Russia-Ukraine war. There is, of course, no security guarantee that forms a part of this deal. America wants access to the important rare earth minerals whose deposits are said to be present in rich quantity as far as Ukraine is concerned. There are some inherent complexities to the talks. Some sources inform there is, of course, no breakthrough as yet with the talks that started on Friday, but what may be worrying is that some sources inform that the talks were, in fact, rather tense, and they were taking place in an antagonist atmosphere, almost reminiscent of what happened when President Zelensky had visited the White House, and the differences really played out in the public. So in that sense, it is a challenging road ahead, but the complexity that is part of this deal is also getting compounded by the fact that President Zelensky had flagged it earlier that the US side is constantly revising the tenets of the deal, making it difficult for Ukraine to articulate exactly what it is supposed to pay. A certain, a maximalist approach that President Trump is known for, that I'm going to take everything and I'm going to give nothing in return, is something seen also being reflected in the negotiations. So that is making the deal tricky. A tense set of talks taking place on Friday, no breakthrough. But we'll have to wait and watch where it goes.
Some stricter demands, Shwendu, you are saying. I mean, is there any change in the latest US proposal? Does it have more tougher demands?
That's right, and that is what the Ukraine side has suggested. In fact, President Zelensky himself has said that what is taking longer for this deal to finalize is that the demands of the United States is changing constantly. Now, in the latest that we're hearing is that US wants more exclusive and privileged access to Ukrainian rare earth minerals in particular. When I say privilege, what it means is that only United States would have access to those minerals, not even Kiev for its own utilization. Besides that, there has to be a common fund that must be created. That fund must then accumulate all the profits from the selling of rare earth minerals, whether it is Kiev that engages in it or there are private companies. So in that sense, America seeks now a much wider control over not just access to the rare earth minerals, but also the manner in which they might be monetized in the days ahead. That is making it challenging for Ukraine. Ukraine has pushed for this minerals deal, saying that it should be a win-win deal for both the sides. It should also help Ukraine modernize, especially after the brutal war, which is stretched past 3 years, destroying most of the critical infrastructure for Ukraine. So in that sense, the two sides appear to be, at least for now, looking in different directions, and it's particularly difficult for Ukraine because the longer this deal takes time to finalize, longer perhaps it will take for peace to come in the conflict.
Stretched past 3 years. What's the latest on that, Shubhendu, Russia-Ukraine conflict? Trump's envoy met Putin in St. Petersburg, Witkoff's third with Putin this year. Anything productive came out of the meeting? Anything substantial?
About the fighting first, Abhishek, as parallel talks are taking place, barring some restrictions on energy and critical infrastructure, the fighting is on between Ukraine and Russia. Earlier this week, we understand that Russia reclaimed much of the very strategically important Kursk region where Ukraine had made breakthroughs earlier. Not just that, Russia is making important breakthroughs on the border region. The latest is that a border village in the Sumy region of Ukraine, which is the borders between Russia and Ukraine, has been captured by Russia. This is coming in from Russian sources as we speak. Both sides are using drones in a significant manner to launch attacks on each other's infrastructure, tit-for-tat attacks really, their air defense trying to foil as many as possible. And the drones are reaching, mind you, to the capitals, both Kiev as well as Moscow. Russia, in fact, had complained in the latest that Ukraine had attempted to target some of its energy infrastructure, more than 5 to 10 energy infrastructure, which goes against a certain moratorium which is in place, where both Russia and Ukraine had agreed not to target one another's energy or other critical civilian infrastructure. So in that sense, that complexity continues and the fighting is raging on. Talking about Steve Witkoff's, Trump's envoy's visit to St. Petersburg, Russia, yes, it's the third round of meeting. The talks are on. And if we were to believe the Kremlin spokesperson, he says that do not expect some dramatic breakthrough because the differences that US and Russia have had for the past many years, the relations has touched rock bottom. The only relations perhaps the two countries have is that of sanctions by one over the other. So in that sense, there is a lot that needs to be ironed out. The talks are on. The US side has been saying that there is a positive momentum to the talks. It'll be important to remind ourselves the conditions that Russia had put to accept peace in the ongoing conflict. Number one was that Russia is going to have authority over the captured lands in Ukraine, and Ukraine will have to move its forces out of those lands. Ukraine will never be part of NATO. That understanding has to be confirmed. Also, NATO forces, no boots on the ground, not even in the form of peacekeeping. And finally, Russia, for its own economy to recover and grow, the sanctions, the best, will have to do away with.
Right, and Europe also intensifies talks on strengthening long-term defense support for Kiev. All right, Shubhendu, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your inputs.